And I just got a message that we are having trouble streaming, but we are recording. So we will perhaps revisit that, but we're free to start the meeting. So take it away, Kim. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Mark. All right, we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order then. Can Stephanie, are you going to call roll?
Yes.
Okay.
Ms. Burton?
Present.
Mr. Brubaker?
Present.
Mr. Chapelier?
Present.
Mr. Gupta?
Present.
Mr. Herskowitz? I think you might be muted.
You're up, Jay.
I got you at the end.
Present. Sorry, present.
You're fine. Mr. Lachey? I think we're missing him. Mr. Paul?
Present.
Mr. Sellers?
Present.
And Mr. Smithers?
Present.
All right, we have a quorum.
Great, thanks, Stephanie. It's always funny in the virtual environment how suspenseful just calling roll can be. So thank you, everybody. We made it through roll.
Meeting adjourned.
Yeah. And on a high note, yes. All right, moving on to our record of proceedings. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes from last time?
I'll move that we accept the meeting minutes from last Rocky Fork meeting.
Thanks, Jay. Do we have a second?
Ralph Smithers, second.
Thank you, Ralph. Do we have any comments? All right, I think we're ready to put it to vote then, Stephanie.
Ms. Burton?
Yes.
Mr. Brubaker?
Yes.
Mr. Chapelier?
Yes.
Mr. Gupta?
Yes.
Mr. Herskowitz?
Yes.
Mr. Paul?
Yes.
Mr. Sellers?
Yes.
And Mr. Smithers?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Excellent. All right, moving on to old business. Is there anything under old business that is not on the agenda? Nope. All right, moving on to new business then. We have one application tonight. It is Z20-115 and CV20-129 at 5949 Central College Road. Would staff like to present this application?
Yes, give me just 1 second to share my screen here. Can you all see that okay? Perfect. Okay. So as Ms. Burton said, this presentation is regarding 5949 Central College Road. We saw this application last month conceptually, so the applicant is back for final review and action by the panel. This slide is just a reminder of where the site is located within the Accord boundaries, denoted there by that red star. This slide is also from the presentation last time. It's just the aerial of the site. This hasn't changed too much. The lines may have moved around a bit, but we're still looking at 3 sub areas, 2 of which are being rezoned to LC4, 1 of which is being rezoned to ARLD, and then the applicant is still requesting variances for parking landscape screening, required parking spaces, maneuvering drive aisles, and fronting. The specifics of those may have changed a bit based on the redesign, though. This is the updated project application evaluation table from the checklist. I went ahead and just highlighted the things that changed, so we can just go over those quickly. Sub-area A, you may recall previously that building had retail, office, and residential in it. The office use has been dropped, so it's just retail and residential now. the acreage for this sub area has gotten just a little bit larger, and the footprint of the building has gotten a little larger. So now we're looking at retail and restaurant on the first floor, and then residential on the second and third floor, whereas previously the second floor was office. Originally, this building just had 6 residential units in it, but with losing the office on that second floor, we picked up 6 more. So now we have 12 total residential units in this building. So those changes certainly affected the proposed density. Since we lost that office space, the commercial density went down. And since we added the residential units, the residential density increased. For sub-area B, the building and sub-area itself did not change size whatsoever, but the use split changed a little bit, so I went ahead and highlighted that. Now it's a pretty even split between retail and restaurant on the first floor, whereas previously the restaurant was much larger. And then for sub-area C, because sub-area A got a little larger, sub-area C got a little bit smaller. No change to the unit count, but that decrease in the acreage just affected the proposed density a bit, so that raised it. So all of those things affected our totals for the project. So now we're looking at 70 total residential units at 16.6 dwelling units an acre for the density, and then 32,100 square foot of commercial for 10,031 square foot of commercial space per acre. This next slide is just the totals from the evaluation checklist. The top one just shows where we were at conceptual, and then the bottom one shows the new totals based on the revised proposal. During the conceptual, we did not calculate the percentage compliance, whereas we did this time around, and this works out to be about 73% compliant with the Accord evaluation criteria. This is the site plan that we saw last month. I just wanted to show it so that we can look at it in comparison to the revised site plan on the next slide. So here is the applicant's revised submittal. We're still, like I said, we're still looking at the 3 sub areas. The 2 front sub areas are still mixed use. You'll see that the applicant was able to scoot the 2 front buildings closer to Central College as requested. Sub area A did add a drive-through that was not there last time, so the building is not quite up against that 60-foot tree-protected area. But they were able to, so there is circulation in front of both buildings, but they were able to relocate all the parking to the side or the rear as requested. And then the back portion is still the 3 apartment buildings. You'll notice that the stormwater basin did get a little bit smaller, and they were able to add some open space in that back corner. They connected with a path, and then they are showing some benches back there to formalize that space a little bit. And then in general, the site plan has just been cleaned up as far as showing the landscaping, the sidewalk width, some of those other things we were asking for. And then the applicant also provided the elevations that we requested. You may recall that previously we just had the front elevation for each of the buildings. So they provided the rear and side elevations. So this is the building proposed for sub area A, the front and back. Sorry, frozen here. There we go. And this is the side of that building, and this would be mirrored on both sides. This is the building at sub area B, so this would be that Bubbly Hall 2 building, so the front and rear, and then the east and west sides of the building. And then these are the elevations for the apartments. So this is the 3-story building, front and rear, and then the side of that building. And then this would be for the 2-story buildings, front and rear, and then the side. So taking all of that into consideration, staff still finds that the uses and densities proposed are appropriate based on this site's location along Central College and how this portion of the road has developed thus far. Additionally, the applicant is proposing office components, which is in line with the Accord plan recommendations. Staff feels that the revised proposal addresses most of the comments from staff and the panel from the February conceptual review, and that the proposal is generally consistent with the Accord plan. So with that being said, staff recommends approval, but would still encourage the applicant to further consider development of a creek trail with some connectivity into the site, as well as incorporating additional bicycle parking, specifically in the sub areas B and C. And that's all I have.
Great, thank you, Stephanie. Would someone from the applicant like to present or talk about the proposal?
Thank you. My name is Eric Zartman. I'm an attorney for the applicant. I have the applicant here, Ethan from Granaz Development, and will be available for any questions you may have as well. Thank you for the presentation, Stephanie. Appreciate it. Took a lot of the words out of my mouth, so I will try not to duplicate too much. May I share my screen, please? All right. So Stephanie hit on a lot of the points that the site plan revisions, the elevations that we provided. So I just wanted to talk about the impact of some of that, and then I'll mostly try to focus on the changes to the development text or the statement of hardship and how that applies to this application. So one of the biggest comments that we've been getting from the get-go, and then also reinforced the last month's meeting, was an importance to have the buildings pushed up to the front of the site and minimize the circuit, not have any parking between the buildings and Central College, and also minimize the circulation as much as possible. So that's what we've done here. Push these buildings up. These are in line with the Belby Hall, or close enough in line to the Belby Hall, which is next door. The only circulation that you'll be seeing here from Central College is the tail end of this drive-through line, and then the exit of this drive-through line here, with hopefully immediate access to Central College. The shifting of these buildings up has made us redesign the parking lot. Most of the aisles in the previous were horizontal. These are vertical aisles. And this caused us to lose a little bit of spaces in sub-area A. And we made up some of those spaces in sub-area B. We intend both of these sub-areas to, not technically share, but the idea is that any of the customers in either of these spots will have access to all of these parking spaces back here, almost like a shared parking area. So hopefully if there's any deficiencies on one or the other, that they can be made up on the other side. Also with that, it caused us to kind of shift the mass of the buildings around. As Stephanie said, they're pretty much the same square footage at the end, but we shifted a few lines of width and depths, but it ultimately is not much of a change at all. Shifting over to the residential area, we, as Stephanie said, we added a sidewalk path here to make some interconnectivity between all three sub areas, and also trying to activate the stormwater basin and with the picnic area here. One thing Stephanie mentioned was encouragement for a trail around the entire stormwater basin. This is not necessarily something that the applicant is opposed to, but we think that the current proposal of this path as it is better for the site for a couple reasons. There's about six trees on this perimeter and 6 trees along this perimeter that are large enough and of quality and that we're committing to saving on this development. This path could potentially these trees potentially interfere with the path going all the way around. And also, we believe that keeping the path on the north side only of this basin is more respectful to the neighbors in this area. It's our client or the applicant's belief that the neighbors wouldn't necessarily want people this close to the property line. So that's specifically why we kept this path activation on the northern part of this basin, and then activated with some benches here. Stephanie mentioned that there's a couple new variances, and I wanted to walk through those quickly and explain what the necessity of that is. So this is technically going to be a property line going down the middle of this drive aisle. And in Columbus, you need a 20-foot drive aisle for 90-degree parking like we have here. Combined, we have 30 feet, but because there's a property line here, technically the drive aisle on each of these parcels is only going to be 15 feet. So the technical reduction of the variance request is to reduce from 20 feet to 15 feet. But combined, traffic going one way, traffic going the other, there's more than enough than what the code requires, practically speaking. And then also the maneuverability down here. These are technically spaces for sub-area C. This is where the property line goes for that. And it's just to ensure that there's enough maneuverability parking in and coming out of these spaces so that if they have to, they can cross this other parcel line that's going right here. So these are kind of just technical variances that are being caused by our proposed lot split. But functionality-wise, they will not cause any issue because, practically speaking, they meet the code requirements. If this line was not there. Let's see. Bicycle parking. We made a point to add bicycle parking, but you can see it's indicated right here from in this sub-area and this sub-area, but we'd certainly be willing to work with planning staff if they have some more ideas for better or location or more bicycle parking. That won't be an issue. Let's see. Stephanie already went over the elevation, so I'll just skip that. I just wanted to remind the panel some of the comments that were raised in the last month's staff report, and then also echoed in the hearing. And I wanted to highlight that we addressed most, if not all, of these. We added these street trees along Central College Road, relocated the buildings towards Central College, added pedestrian circulation on the north end of the pond and in between the sub areas. We committed to the preservation zone and limitation text. I mentioned that there are 12 trees on sub-area C that were identified as for preservation. Those are on the site plan. We have identified the lighting on the site plan. I don't know if the sidewalk widths made it on the site plan, but we gave that information to Stephanie, and if that's not, then we'll add that on there. But we did. And it's in the staff report for this month as well that we did that. Added bicycle parking, site plan or building line on the site plan. Provided floor side elevations for all of the buildings, and we're still proposing brick natural materials on the first floor and hardy plank on the second and floors above, or vinyl. Sorry, vinyl and hardy plank for the floors above. See. I think that is all I wanted to specifically bring to your attention. We appreciate your consideration and hope to receive a positive recommendation. Ethan is here if you have any questions, and also will be happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. All right, comment, I'm sorry, I forgot to ask, do we have any members of the public that submitted a request to talk tonight? No, all right. All right, we'll move on to the panel then. Do we have any comments from the panel?
I have a question, but it's probably a question to direct first to staff. We're in an area on this project that is a little confusing in that there's sort of a dual jurisdiction. It is part of the Rocky Fork Accord area. It's also within the area that the Northland Community Council serves in terms of variants other than those that are concurrent variances with rezoning. And I just wanted to clarify that the applicant won't need to come speak with the Northland Community Council about this project in its current form, but that they would need to if they found they needed additional variances that are not contained within the concurrent variance. Is that correct?
That is a good question, and one I do not know the answer to. Mark,
Okay.
do you know the answer to this question?
I'm sorry, Dave. I had technical difficulties and I had to get back into my WebEx. So would you
That's
mind
okay.
repeating that?
That's not a problem at all. I think, Mark, you know that this isn't an area that is served both by the Rocky Fork Accord panel and also by the Northland Community Council Development Committee. And I find myself actually a chair of that committee as well. So it raised a question in my mind, first of all, that for the rezoning, I know that the Rocky Fork Accord panel hears those. Yeah, and the variances are concurrent with the rezoning. If they were to find that they needed any additional variances that are not contained within the concurrent variance, I believe they would need to come talk with the Northland Community Council. Would you agree?
Has the rezoning and variance application that we're looking at today, has that also been reviewed by the Northland Community Council?
It has not.
Okay. Because yes, I am also not sure. I mean, typically if there are additional variances that are required, that may trigger like starting back the rezoning process again generally. But I couldn't tell you for certain in this case. So we'll have to touch base with you again on that.
That's fine. And I don't mean to burden the panel or the applicant on this. And I don't want, I'm not a fan of duplicating work. We work with Eric and his firm quite a lot as it is. I just didn't want us to sort of lose sight of that overlay, if you will, that occurs in this area between NCC and the Accord. And maybe we are getting to a point too where we need to sit down, that is staff and NCC, and kind of figure out or document that a little bit. Up until this point, it hasn't really proven to be an issue, but I just did want to make sure that I understood staff's opinion. If they were, once the rezoning is approved, if they needed, for example, graphics to be approved or other types of variants, whether they would come to speak with us. So thank you.
Thanks, Dave.
Thanks, Dave. Additional comments from the
Yes, I have one, if I could.
Go ahead,
Or
Matt.
it may turn out to be more than one, I don't know. Hope not, but anyway, this first part of it is for the staff. You gave it a rating of 73% on the passage for what the Rocky Fork Blacklick Accord would recommend. And as time has gone on, and I've been on the panel, I don't even know how many years now, but for quite a while, it seems like as we've gotten further and further along, the percentage of passage of what the Rocky Fork Blacklick Accord was supposed to be doing has been going down. I don't remember any one that I've been on that was as low as 73%. Before, 80% was kind of a low number, and usually it was 90 or above. So I'm not understanding why, now that this is basically the last piece of property to be developed along this area, that it's going to be even lower. With that being said, some of my concerns, and it was indicated that the staff had requested that the buildings be moved closer to Central College Road. To my way of thinking, for the visual effect of the corridors and everything we were trying to keep, if anything, they should have been moved the other direction. And so we've now gone higher on the density. We've gone closer to the road. We still haven't, from my concern from last time around, done anything as far as where the easement area is. The gentleman that spoke was talking about the trees that were saved along the easement or right of way for the gas company, but the gas company has the right to come along and cut down any tree there. And for anybody that was in the area a number of years ago, the gas company came along and said, oh, we need to clear all these trees out along the line, the easement area of the gas line. And so they started coming in and cutting everything down. They were within their right, but nonetheless, it caused everybody in the area to be in an uproar. So they very easily could come along, and that the building being right on the easement line doesn't allow for any kind of a dirt barrier or anything like that to cut down on noise or visuals or anything else. So that part has me a little concerned too. But if you go up to the Central College Road, my question for the applicant is how far closer to the road did you put the buildings from where they were the last time, which at that point I thought they were too close. If you take a visual, and I'd ask them if they could bring up Google Maps at this point to tell me where the buildings are going to be in line with the other buildings in that area. Could you bring up Google Maps for me? Okay, can you go in a little closer? Okay, if you look past, well, where you got the Grimacy, theirs are set fairly far back. The ones right across the street are set even further back. Those are 3-story units over there, and none of the ones on the south side of the road are 3-story until you get to the east side of New Albany Road West. And so I'm concerned as to what 2 buildings sitting right out there now moved even closer to the road, 2 3-story buildings sitting there, how that's going to look and affect the entire corridor look of everything you got going on there. So those are my biggest concerns. I like the drawings of what the buildings look like. I like what they're trying to do. As I mentioned last time, this is the property that I grew up on, and the road that you see there on the map, that was just about exactly where our driveway was. It came back 750 feet off the road to where the house was. If you go into the Grimacy and you go into their main area, you can see pictures of what the farm used to look like. And if you look in one of their rooms, you'll probably find pictures of my brothers and I sitting on a fence with horses around. So with that being said, I understand the area. I know it has to grow, but there are some of these things that I just don't understand, and why over time our efficiency rating on what we're looking at keeps going down as opposed to either holding constant or possibly even going up. But where we used to be, I don't think it would need to go up. Nobody would have a question at that point, and maybe no one else does at this point. But those are my concerns at this point in time. I don't have a problem with a mixed use. There is some, not right along this section of Central College Road, but if you go to New Albany Road West and go up to across from where the goat is there, they have mixed use in that area, and I understand that, but there isn't any other mixed use along here. Now, I know that area is already zoned to put buildings in, but at this point, I question having two 3-story buildings there. And I guess that's all I have for now.
Sure. Eric, if you guys don't mind, I will answer the staff questions first and then turn it over to you all. Thank you for the comments. So your first question was about the percentage, the 73%. I can say that I did not have that history to know that, there was a threshold at one point that it was generally 90%, and then 80%. So that's good to know. Thank you. I think that this one is sitting at the 70% because we had it was kind of fitting a square peg into a round hole. This is recommended for office. Obviously, the office checklist, I tried to do that one first, and it was not applicable at all. Generally speaking, most of the evaluation criteria just it had nothing to do with residential. It had really nothing to do with retail. So we looked at how kind of the area has developed, and it's just right across the street from the town mixed use Rocky Fork recommendation. So we felt that would be the appropriate checklist to use, but it still doesn't exactly cover this project. So I think that is part of the issue, and that's why you see 12 there for NA. There were just some things on this checklist that didn't apply to this project. So I think that is part of the reason that the percentage is lower. If Mark, if you have any thoughts on that, that would be my guess. We were able to resolve all of the question mark issues, which would have brought it even lower. But yeah, I think it's those NAs that are really throwing it off. And then as far as moving the buildings closer to Central College, one thing to clarify with that is that we, while we said move the buildings to the street, the intent was to line the buildings up with the neighboring buildings, not be, a 0-foot urban setback. So these buildings, if we look at the site plan, they are in line with the Bubbly Hall building that's going in, and just like ever so slightly farther forward, you can see on the left than those. I think are
how tall of a building is that?
The Bubbly Hall building?
Yes.
I'm not sure. That would be a good question for our applicant because I believe they're developing that one as well.
Because I'm looking at the visual aspect of what you're seeing coming down the road, as opposed to, if it's a one-floor building with a peaked roof or something like that, then that's almost insignificant compared to the two big buildings that are going to be putting their 3 stories.
Hey, Mike, when I look across the street in Google Street View, there's actually some 3-story apartments.
Across the street, but they're set back further from the road quite a bit.
Stephanie, should we jump in now? I didn't want to cut you off.
No, thank you. And then, Mr. Chapler, your third question was about the gas line and easement. And that really was not something that was a part of the checklist, just because that's something hyper specific to the site that just wasn't evaluated on that point. So as far as my perspective on that was that we left it to the applicant to do their due diligence on that and make sure that that they check, as they said, they were going to check with the gas company and make sure they were set back far enough based on the easement and things like that. So I will let them answer that question for you.
Okay.
Go ahead, Eric and Ethan.
Great. Thank you. Appreciate the question, Mr. Chapler. So specifically with the relocation of the building, it was pushed about 30 feet closer to Central College Road. That basically got rid of 2 rows of parking and a little bit of circulation air, and replaced that with the drive-through that you see now. I do recall your comments from last month about your opinion on that the setback should be greater and not shorter. And I don't want to say that we didn't consider that at all, or that we're trying to ignore your opinion, but we were also weighing that against the opinion of the planning department and also some of your fellow commissioners. And ultimately, that's how we ended up on the site plan we have today, where we did push up the building to be in line with the Bubbly Hall 1. The the Google Maps that was pulled up, it does accurately show the setbacks of buildings across the street and to the west. But what it doesn't do is it doesn't have Bubbly Hall on the east, Bubbly Hall 1 on the east across from that private drive. And we think that both of these buildings together are really going to complement complement each other's setback, and that if one was pushed up compared to the other, it might actually look more disjointed or less cohesion between the two buildings. So we think that when people are driving up and down Central College Road, it'll be more visually appealing to have these buildings both match in architecture, but also now the setback. Let's see.
Is that building a one-story?
I was actually going to pass it over, Ethan. If you could describe the style of the Bubbly Hall 1 and how the size of it. I believe it's a 2-story with a pitched roof, but I'll let Ethan speak
Sure.
on that.
Sure. I don't know if any other comments on building and stuff that I can answer all together, or we can go one by one. But thank you, Mike, for your comments. And I definitely feel the passion and care that you have for the area and for this particular lot. I guess we are fortunate enough to develop the new concept on the lot that you grew up with. And that's great. But there are a few things I guess we have to keep in mind when we are looking at mixed use communities. So you mentioned all those surrounding developments and buildings around us, but first of all, keep in mind those are residentials. And I guess one of the trends that in real estate development and even urban design development nowadays is mixed use. And the whole idea of mixed use is that actually mix and bring the feeling and the amenity to the residential community. So setting these back doesn't really help to address those feelings when you're addressing residential, when you're developing a commercial building and bring amenities to the community. So one thing that the study actually has shown that people who are living in mixed use development and closer to the amenities, that increase the level of trust, hope, and decrease the loneliness. So when you're designing a kind of community like this, I guess we have to keep that in mind, that we want to bring all the community together and in a more open arm, way, I guess. Mixed use communities and people who living in those close by to amenities actually shows less loneliness and restores faith and a more kind of attachment to the community. So that's the reason, I guess, that the commercial building should be more closer, to the main road. First of all, it gives better exposure and people feel more welcoming. And on the other hand, it's not like so isolated. Like there are like a lot of strip malls around, and you never feel any kind of that touchy feeling which you have when you walk into the North System market, for example. That type of a feeling and attachment that we are trying to bring to the community. And well, just imagine when people walk across the street from those LC communities and see all the activities happening close by to the real road, to the main road, or people driving by and feeling that little quick look actually would make a big difference in people feeling. Like I said, people who are in amenity rich communities, they are much less likely to feel loneliness and isolated. So I think one of the main reasons, even though we have those parking spot at the in front at the beginning, and there was a reason for it, and one of them was that we wanted to mix that to the back side the residential community, but also we wanted to make sure that we have enough parking. So, but honestly, adding those and keeping those closer to the main road and central college road, from urban design standpoint, I think it is a better thing to do. Even though I'm losing probably 5, I don't know, Eric, we lost how many, 5, 10 parking spots, but in general, that helps. That helps that touchy feeling thing from urban design standpoint. And I guess that's, to me, that was a good comment, even though it hurt us a little bit, but in general, that was a good comment. I guess the mixed use, the whole idea of mixed use community is that bringing that joyful and community attachment feeling into the area, and that's what we are doing. This development in general is supposed to be a social hub for the whole community, something that really missed there. Is Mr. and we are hoping that we can help to help people. And guess that's the reason actually for fact that we are being welcomed with all people around us. I mean, even Bobby Hall 1, we haven't finished the project yet, but you can't believe how much actually interest and how much love we have received from people around and people in the area. So I think that those are a couple of things I wanted to mention in terms of the whole. I guess you have to look at it as a whole, like Eric says, at a whole 10 acres development rather than just one piece of building. This side project is actually not short at all. It's 23 feet tall building. It's almost 2 stories building. Well, this one is 2 stories, probably 2, that particular building that you're talking about is 2 stories building and going to be over 23 feet high. But in general, it's not like 1 story residential and 3 stories residential. So I hope I don't know if I answered that or if that makes sense, but that's all I have.
Madam Chair, if I could pose a question.
Yes, please.
Sure.
As I'm looking at the site plan, though, I believe it says 3-story mixed-use building. Am I looking in the wrong place? On sub-area B?
Sub-area B is 2 stories. Actually, it's 3 stories is wrong spelling. That was the part that actually I believe we took the 3rd stories off and just do the 2 stories office and retail on the bottom.
Okay, and in sub-area A, that building, that mixed-use building is still 3 stories?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I also just wanted to offer a comment to my colleague, Mr. Chapelier, in that my perception is we're also running up against the difference between the current C2, P2 policies, the city's citywide planning policies that they are promoting. I will say the Northland Community Council is not 100% on board with them either. There are some places where we'd like to see parking remain in front, bigger setbacks, etc. But I do think that the Columbus standards are part of what's coming into play here in terms of wanting to move the parking off the street behind the building. And that might be one distinction from what we're seeing in terms of the New Albany tradition of having a lot of setback and green space in front. So I kind of feel you. I kind of know where you're coming from, but I think we're kind of at odds with where the city is telling the applicant to go in this case. So thank you.
I have a question. This question would be directed towards staff. So there were a number of technical variances that were documented, and I'm just wondering if, I like with the width of the drive. I mean, that makes complete sense to me. They're right next to each other, so I buy the technical aspect of that variance. If we were to give the applicant the benefit of the doubt on those technical variances, what would the score be in that case?
Those variances, I don't think really had much of an impact on the score, just because the score is just really at the mercy of the items that are already in the checklist. So, for example, the checklist doesn't say anything about like drive aisles. So there really, I don't think probably was too much of an impact based on the variances. The variances were more like, I think the one for like parking, landscaping, screening, was more just a technicality about screening like from different uses, which we don't really have in between the two parcels. So I don't think that that would have affected the score very much.
Thank you.
Ralph, I did do a quick calculation. I took out all the non-applicable ones that Stephanie mentioned, and they're at about 85% if you take those completely out of the calculation.
Okay. That provides clarity, so I appreciate that. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And I would have done it myself. I just didn't know what the methodology was, so thanks.
I made up my own on the fly. I don't know if that was right or not, but I was kind of curious too.
I trust you in your position of leadership.
Thank you, Ralph. Additional comments from the panel?
I got a question. Mike, do you feel like your questions and comments were addressed? Because you had quite a few in there. I just wanted to make sure before you move too far past.
Yeah, I think that I appreciated what the applicants had to say, and I can understand their point of view. But I don't know that from the visual standpoint of the corridor type area we've been trying to keep developed over the years, that now that we get down to the last piece of the pie, then you start going away from it and say, oh, well, we want all these different things. I have no problems with mixed use. I have a building of my own that's considered mixed use. So with that being said, I have no problems with mixed use. It's just that it doesn't really conform with everything else that's going on in the area. And to put the tall buildings there next to everything that's smaller, and you got the condos behind it there, it's not a gradual up and down. It's just kind of oh, here's a big thing in the center. And if I were laying the property out, I would have probably done it entirely differently, but that's okay. Things happen. I would have probably put my buildings on my business buildings on Central College, and also coming back the road a little bit. And I don't even know what they call that road now. It used to be my drive, but anyway, I would put the buildings maybe in an L shape there, and then put the apartment buildings over closer to the stream, and kind of separated out that way. But that's their choice to do. I just I don't think that it fits in the best interest of the ideals that we were trying to do all along. And he keeps coming back to the one building that's now set closer, which is actually part of his phase one. We didn't have any discussion on that. So that somehow they got it past the city, or they didn't rezone something or whatever. Okay, that's fine. But I know a couple of years ago, there was a building just down the road. It was a early learning center or something like that. And I kept saying, that looks awfully close to the road. That looks awfully close to the road. And they said, oh, no, it fits with everything else in line. But if you pull up that same Google map we had earlier, you'll see that it clearly sits out closer to the road. And that part of the road is part that hasn't been widened yet. And everything on Central College Road from Hamilton down to 605 is going to be a wide road. So that's what I'm going by. I just see this as being the last piece of the pie, and let's see how many forks we can jam in it and go with it. So that's all.
Thank you, Mike. I'll jump in with a couple comments here. So I know you've heard some varying opinions tonight. I was really happy that the applicant was responsive to the city and some of our comments about relocating the buildings closer to the road. I know that a few people don't agree with me tonight, but on my end, I was happy to see it, and it's kind of the area, like Dave was saying earlier, the area here, the plan is to have the buildings close to the road, and they do appear to be in line with their neighbors. The height, I don't personally see it as an issue, but some others do, and that's fair. We'll rely on kind of staff directing us to what they think is best for the height, in my opinion. But so I was really happy to see that the applicant was responsive to our comments about moving the buildings and redesigning the site to make it work. I have no problem with the drive-through being in front of the buildings. Like I said, it works, and it does keep them more in line with the other buildings and pushing them even further closer to the road. So I think that was a good spot for them. I know you mentioned the sidewalks, and you're showing them on here now, which is great. And I know they're not indicated their dimensions right now. Do you recall offhand what width of sidewalks that you used?
Yeah, they're mainly like 5 to 7 feet wide sidewalk.
All right, so no less than 5. That's excellent. Okay, perfect. I think like I just had 2 comments. One, that in sub-area B in the southeast corner, you mentioned wanting a variance for those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 parking spots. And I feel like at least the 2 or 3 of them on the easternmost ones may be a little unsafe because they're right at that access point. So there's going to be queues of cars turning onto that road, and people might be trying to back out of those spots. So I feel like you're trying to fit a little extra parking in on a tight site that maybe it shouldn't go there. So just my opinion. I'm sure the city will tell you, but it makes me a little uncomfortable. I know I wouldn't probably love backing out of those spots myself, especially if I didn't realize somebody was sitting there making a turn onto the road. So want to point that out. And then I really liked seeing the circulator you put in down by the drainage basin. And I liked the touch with the benches where people could rest. I thought that was excellent. I'd certainly love to see it going around the drainage basin, like you mentioned earlier, it had been considered. I think, honestly, people are going to walk around that basin whether or not you provide a trail. So it might behoove you to, if people like to walk around water and look at it. So it might behoove you to put the trail in, and that actually might make your neighbors happier than watching people walk randomly through the grass. And then I did have one question for staff, because I'd love to see that trail relate over to the water and connect back up to Central College if possible. And I didn't know if they could actually put the trail within the easement, or if they need to stay outside of the easement for a possible connection.
Are you talking about that 60-foot stream corridor protection? Putting
Yes.
the trail of it? Yeah, so I sent Mark a chat about that. So I was going to just clarify offline with our applicant, but so when in our recommendation where I mentioned considering a creek trail, that's actually what we were talking about. In addition to having some pathways and options around the pond, we were talking about developing something along that creek area that would connect throughout the site back to that pond recreation area.
Okay, so that might be a possibility. I think it would connect the residential back up to sub-area A also quite nicely, so people could move back and forth without walking through the parking, and then connect it up into that sidewalk up there, if at all possible. And that would be a really nice feature for your site, I think. Give people, once again, some more places to walk around. But otherwise, like I said, I think the site's looking good. I appreciate all the effort you put into redesigning it based on our comments. And certainly, I know the gas line issue hasn't been addressed yet. And of course, I know that was a concern that you heard quite a bit last month. And hopefully, you can continue working with staff on that. But I know Mike wants to jump in here.
Yeah, I just have a quick question concerning the parking. Who has priority over the parking spaces? The people that are living in the apartments, or the customers wanting to come in to dine in, or whatever it is that they're doing in your restaurants or whatever your retail is? Will the apartment people have a designated area that they park in, or is it just first come, first serve? Because otherwise you're going to have people in the apartments pulling into the areas closest to your businesses and just leaving their car there for 24, 48, 68 hours, however long they decide to leave their car there.
Yes, thank you. That's a good question, and it was going to be part of my response to the last question too. The parking spaces in subarea C are all designed and intended for residential uses only, and that includes those 7 spaces that were identified as maybe not an ideal situation, but the people that will be parking in those spaces are going to be living there and have experience with those spaces as well. So maybe it's not ideal with the driveway coming in, but they'll have certainly enough experience to know how to navigate that. And that goes for the rest of the parking spaces in the sub-area C. Those are going to be for the residences. Now, there may be some sharing between sub-areas A and B, and also with over Bubbly Hall 1. If there's any overflow going over there for any particular reason, but the sub-area C is going to be strictly for the residential uses. Ethan, did you have anything to add to that? Especially about the, it's my understanding that we cannot put a path in that easement, but Ethan would know better than me, so I'll pass it over to him for that.
Yes, based on text that as much as I know, we can't touch that. But if well, I don't know if any person in charge that give us a green light, well, we don't have problem to actually make that feature. I agree, Kim, it's going to be a great feature to the whole site, and we love to have that because we are all about creating new experiences and have a joyful lifestyle for people. Regarding the parking spot, you're right. The residents at the sub-area C, they would have their own parking spot. Well, I think during the peak time, there might be some overlap in general, mainly maybe the commercial customers using it while they're like during daytime or lunchtime, for example, which there is no residents probably, or very smaller amount of residents are there. But in general, residents have their own parking spots, and they have right to use it. So that one thing, and then I guess that just the last comments I would have on regarding the building location. I just noticed that actually, if you look at the sharing screen over here in the screen, you look at the site. On the left side, you see the apartment, the adjacent apartment, the other development, and if you continue that line, from the last apartment on the left side, more on the west side of the project, and you continue that line, you'd see that line actually is pretty aligned with the 3 buildings that we propose. So from that look, just continue that dash line, and then that dash line actually would align pretty much with our building, and even the building B is even a little bit further back, the adjacent property from our side. So from the building standpoint, if you look at that dash line and then keep continuing that actually is pretty aligned with our proposed building. So that was my last comment regarding the building location. So,
Madam Chair.
Hey, Kim, this is Jay. Can I chime in?
Yes, Jay, please.
Yeah, to the applicants regarding the Pork Chop Island off of Central College. Number one, does that curb cut align with anything across the road? Or there isn't anything across the road?
There's nothing across the road from that.
Okay, that's good. And then I could see people wanting to make a left into there, even though this is being designed as a right in, right out. So I would ask that special consideration be given to designing that pork chop so that it accomplishes what you wish to accomplish, and that you consider like an aesthetic treatment within the island. I mentioned before, it's something the board looked at, grass, and the applicant goes, well, we're not making the pork chop out of grass. He totally didn't get my point. But if you look at up in Walnut Street, for example, there's a school up there that there's a pork chop that's designed to limber traffic to right in, right out, and then the interior of it is a beautiful kind of lawn, grass, green area. And then I don't know if Kim, what her opinion is in New Albany. We do some work with New Albany. A lot of times on these pork chops, they'll put these obtrusive looking reboundable posts as some kind of protective measure. And I think people are starting to question the utility of those. And once they get hit or clipped, they're hard to replace. So I don't know what the traffic engineering opinion is on reboundable posts on those pork chops, but I think if we can keep that island green, it'll contribute somewhat to the corridor. That's it.
Thank you, Jay. I agree that a good, strong presence there for the right in, right out, so that people are not tempted to still make a left turn into the right in section is good. I still see people try to do that everywhere, and it drives me crazy.
Is that section of Central College right now 3 lanes in that area?
Yes.
If it's not, it's very close. Okay, you already have 3 lanes. One of them is a turn lane. So my first thought is I don't know that it would even be necessary to have right in, right out if you have a turn lane situation right there.
So the Central College Road is literally is 3 lane and with 1 middle lane for turn lane. So basically it's 4 lane in that particular corridor. The reason behind putting that, it was basically having all these activities in that particular corner and actually direct all the traffic to that particular small access road. I don't think that's a wise thing to do, just because that particular road is going to be so crowded, and in particular that particular road is a shared road with 4 different communities. From 10 left standpoint, that was a good point, but I think what the idea is actually people from for 10 left turn traffic would get into the Bubbly Way or that particular access road, and then they can get to the communities from there. And then this in and out just is designed to take a lot of traffic load off that particular access road. From the traffic standpoint, actually, we have been in conversation with traffic engineers in the city, and from my understanding and initial contacts that we have with them, they seems to be on board with that in and out, just because that particular access road wouldn't have enough potential to carry all the traffic that will be created by the development, as well as the behind residential community and the Ace Hardware over there, and there's another commercial property that may develop in the future. So we hope that the most left turn traffic being carried by that access road, and that in and out being just for right in and right out.
Yeah, and I know I always comment on access management, so my fellow panel members are probably wondering why I didn't say anything this time, but I figured based on your volumes, you probably had justified it, but City of Columbus would definitely be looking at this and tell you guys if you could do it or not. So that's why I, for once, didn't say anything about an extra access point. I'm not slipping you guys. I just figured this one was probably okay. Just to go back to that little parking area, though, I did want to mention that speaking of access management, usually you want a queue length so that you can stack at least 1 or 2 cars before you have any kind of extra access or parking or anything. So just keep that in mind. I'm sure the city will look at that, but even if you take, I don't know the scale of this, but even if you take out like one of those spots, it would probably make it a little safer. Because yes, the residents will be used to living there, but you don't always see just the back end of a car right behind you, if depending on where the queue length is falling on those parking spots. So I just thinking for safety purposes, is all I'm looking at there. All right, any other comments from the panel?
Madam Chair, I was going to suggest that Brad Westall with the Recreation and Parks Department might be a good resource on the question of whether a path, recreational path could be located in the conservation easement. It seems to me that Recreation and Parks has paths that are located in easements. And in fact, Eric, possibly the one that I just recently met with David Hodge about, that may be located within a conservation easement as well. But Brad's a good fellow to talk with, and if there is precedent for that, Brad would probably be somebody who would know right off the bat. And then the other question I'll hold till we get into other business, because it doesn't really pertain to this particular application, other than we've already discussed. So, thank you.
Thank you, Dave. We'll raise the issue with Mr. Westall on that.
Yeah, it might come down to a maintenance issue at that point.
Kim, I have a question real quick if I could.
Yes.
So I was going to ask, I know down in sub area C, and you mentioned it earlier, committing to preserving those 12 trees that are down there as kind of like a buffer zone. And maybe Mike can answer this question since this is his old property, but what type of trees are those? And I guess my concern.
Okay. I have an aerial photo of our farm in 1964, and there in that area there was not a single tree anywhere. That was a field that we kept plowed. The gas line ran through the center of it. We also had a horse ring out front there where we had horse shows and stuff like that. So there were no trees in that area. It was just a farmed field. From about that point on, maybe 65 thereabouts, we weren't doing so much of the farming aspect of it. And so that field was basically left to grow. So anything that's there, it's probably either a maple or an oak. That's what was most popular around there. That self-seeded, it was self-seeded. It wasn't anything that was planted. There aren't any 100-year-old trees or anything like that in that area. So
yep,
there isn't anything that's older than that. And when we had the farm, we actually had 2 gas lines crossing the farm. They crisscrossed in the center, and they had come in when I was much younger and took out one of the lines, and of course cut down every tree around it just to get the lines out of the ground. And then for the most part, any tree that was within their area, they either cut out or we just farmed over top of it. So there aren't any historical trees there by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah, I'm just wondering what type of buffer those are really going to be, if they were substantial trees or if it was something.
Well, if you take a maple tree that's that old, it's probably a pretty nice tree now, but you're not looking at old growth by any stretch of the imagination. So that's all I have on that.
Sorry, Mr. Sellers, I don't know the answer to this. Ethan, do you know what type of trees are down there around the perimeter?
I don't know exactly. There's some, but like Mike mentioned, that actually those are. So this lot has been, well, not even after that. It's not has been just sitting there for for last 20 years. They're like doing some activities there in order to the retention pond and the temporary retention pond and all those stuff. So 99% of those trees over there were like basically trash trees or just a wild growth trees over there. Those 6 trees on each side, in particular, the 6 trees on that particular neighbor side on the southeast side of the pond. Those were just they're like a very small and young trees, but healthy. So we walk with neighbors over there and kind of try to see if any of these trees they like to save, and also what, you know, if there are any of them are worth to save, because if they are not healthy, it just doesn't worth. And then we mark these 12 trees over there, and they are like where it was mentioned, actually they're pretty much young, maybe 10, 12 years old, and not historic trees by any means, and those are probably the healthiest that we could find. So.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I just want to make sure, and I appreciate the focus on trying to keep the trees for screening, and just want to make sure that whatever was there that was worth keeping, and if not, what the plan was. If we go through construction and some of these trees die inevitably, and we're left with 7 trees instead of 12, if there's a plan to come back with some sort of additional screening just to kind of maintain that buffer throughout.
Sure. Well, on the southeast side, like I said, we actually work with that particular individual over there, and we spend quite a bit of time with them, and any trees that can be saved and provided, because that particular neighbor was very concerned about new development, particularly like that lot sitting there for quite a while, and they wanted some sort of a screening and everything. And actually, they were the people that marked those trees, and they said, okay, I mean, if you can save these trees, we are happy. And those are not, like I said, they're not tall or old, but they are healthy, and there's some pine trees there, and they're healthy enough to save. And pretty much, I guess they're doing a good job in terms of the screening. From southeast side, though, well, they're quite a bit real estate between our development and the adjacent development, that plus that the gas easement itself has quite a bit of screening there as well. So I think from southeast, the screening wouldn't be an issue because of the gap that we have between two development. So
thank you.
Sure. And one more thing, as I guess some of members mentioned, that those are actually sitting in a gas company easement, and we don't have any right to do it. And if they want us to cut it, or they want us to not to have anything, we cannot actually plant anything there. The only thing that we could have done is basically save the existing trees on that easement. So we don't have any right to do anything. The root and stuff might be a problem. If they want to cut it, that's their right to do it. So.
Thank you. Stephanie, did I hear your voice a while ago when you're trying to speak up and say something?
Yes.
Okay,
I just wanted to, thank you. I just wanted to point out, I guess make one point, and then I had a question for our applicant just to clarify. Yes, I would say as far as the potential trail in that easement area, that would be our recommendation as well, is that you work with Recreation and Parks on that, and we can certainly help facilitate that conversation if need be. But yes, that would have been our recommendation as well. And then my question is, either for Ethan or Eric, I thought when you were talking that you said that sub area B, that building was actually only going to be 2 stories. So could you just clarify that, because the elevations, I think, are showing 3 stories for sub area A and B, and then so does the site plan. I don't know that that necessarily affects anything on my checklist or anything, but just to clarify what we're actually talking about.
Sure, thank you. I'm not really sure if Ethan might have misspoken or not, but I'm sorry. We're proposing 3 stories, and the uses that are described in the data table on the side.
Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry, I'm still confused. Did you say, Eric, it will be 3 stories or 2 stories, the building in sub-area B?
We're proposing a development of 3 stories. I think Ethan might have been talking about a possibility of a smaller development if that's the way the property actually turns out. But what we're proposing right now is a 3-story. Ethan, you can correct me if I'm speaking out of line here.
No, actually, you're right. Well, the idea is, if we have a office on the 2nd floor and retail on the bottom, and the residential and above may not necessarily meet the requirement or actually match and become popular, we may do it 2 stories later whenever you get to the development. But I believe right now, I'm sorry, the reason I guess I misspelled that is 3 stories, but the might change.
So, okay, it's fair to say you're asking for a 3-story building there. You might ultimately end up only building 2. Is that a fair statement then?
That's
Exactly.
correct.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Yes.
All right, I think we're clear now on the stories. Okay, excellent. Would anyone else like to comment on this application? Any clarifications needed? All right. Are we at the point where we could put a motion on the table here?
I don't want to put him on the spot, but I think in light of Mr. Chaplier's connection to this property, he should have the right of first motion on it.
I make a motion that we vote on it.
A motion to approve or to vote?
Oh, to approve. I make a motion to approve.
All right, thanks, Mike.
I
Do we
didn't know
have
you
a
did-
second?
Seconded.
All right, thank you, Mo. All right, do we have any comments or stipulations that we would like to add to this motion for approval?
Should we add any consideration about that trail on the west side of the, I'm assuming on the west side of the property, or does that need to be formalized in any way?
I wouldn't mind getting a recommendation from staff on that. Do we feel like that's something we should add as a stipulation, or do you feel comfortable working with the applicant in figuring it out without us?
I put it in the staff recommendation. Mark, is that something that, if it was a consideration, that we could kind of go back and follow up on, or?
I mean, the panel is free to make that recommendation if they would like.
Okay.
So up to you.
Excuse me. I'm concerned about making that particular thing a condition of the vote, because I see a world where our hands are tied, and that's not something that we can comply with. I think Ethan mentioned earlier that if that's something that we can do, he would actually be excited to do that. And I think the best we can do is promise to work with the Parks Department and try to get that done. But I don't want to see a world where maybe this is a condition of approval and it turns out that that's something we're just legally not allowed to do. So that's my only concern with that.
And I was going to say essentially the same thing. I think we're suggesting it as a recommendation, but not a condition.
We would just recommend that they work with staff. We don't have to say that they have to build it.
I would assume that none of us would consider, if we're otherwise disposed to recommend approval, I don't think we disapprove your project if you couldn't put a path there. That's where I'm coming from anyway.
Yeah, and the reason for my question is that I just want to know what I'm voting on. So
Yes.
that's all.
Yes. All right, so do we have, would somebody like to state what the extra stipulation is that we're going to add to our approval?
But Kim, can I mention something very quick regarding that pathway? I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Just because just something actually came up, and I just came up in my mind. This actually retention pond discharge will be in that easement. So because of that discharge, I don't think they would. First of all, as much as I know, and we studied this a lot, and we cannot touch. We cannot get even closer to that 65-foot easement. I mean, that's even one time I want to walk there, and then I was prohibited to. So, and then plus there's going to be a discharge in that thing. So I'm pretty sure they're going to be a very tough road in order to do anything in that. But like Eric says, if there's a chance to make something, I mean, we would happy to work with you guys. But we appreciate that it's not being a condition. Thank you.
Yep. Yep, very valid points. All right. So how do my fellow panel members want to deal with the stipulation?
Yeah, I just wanted to go ahead, Dave.
Go ahead, Ron.
Okay, I was just wanting to make sure I knew exactly what I was voting on. That's all. We had a discussion, but it wasn't tidied up. So,
yep.
So that's good enough for me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ralph. Dave, did you have something you wanted to add?
I would just say that the recommendation will appear, I assume, in our minutes. It's appearing in staff's comments. The applicant has clearly heard and understood what we've suggested, and if it's possible to do it, I gather he will do his best. So I don't know that we really need to amend the motion in any fashion. I think the motion stands without any stipulation or addendum unless Mr. Chapelier wanted to amend it in some way. So.
Okay, I'm fine with that.
I don't think it's necessary to amend it in any way.
Okay, so we can go ahead and move forward with the vote with no stipulations attached.
We still need a second, don't we? Did anybody second it?
Yes. Yeah, Mo seconded it.
I'll second that, yeah.
Yeah. All right, so we're back to our original motion and no stipulations. And so I think we're good to go to a vote then, unless anyone else, any other comments or things they want to add? Okay. All right, I think it's safe to call roll again.
Okay, Ms. Burton,
Yes.
Mr. Brubaker,
Yes.
Mr. Chapelier,
No.
Mr. Gupta,
Yes.
Mr. Herskowitz,
Yes.
Mr. Paul,
Yes.
Mr. Sellers,
Yes.
and Mr. Smithers.
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate all your work and attention on this. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. All right, do we have any other business that we need to talk about tonight?
Madam Chair, I mentioned something earlier that I thought I would mention in this section of the agenda. And that was just, I can't recall, has this body had a presentation about C2P2, the citywide Columbus citywide planning process and policies?
I think we did a lifetime ago at this point.
I can.
In person.
Was it in person? Yeah, it was last year.
Last year? Okay.
So,
Right.
I'll just answer that, or to what I know anyway. I believe that there was a presentation to the panel sometime in the summer of 2018. So that was before. Oh, there might have been two. Okay, so
Steve
I believe
introduced it, and then he came back when it was more refined, and we voted to support it, I believe.
We'd have to look back. Okay, we'd have to look back in the minutes for that, but I believe that before either Stephanie or I started, that there was a presentation for the panel.
Okay, I couldn't remember because again, I've got multiple organizations I'm working with. And I couldn't remember who had it and who hadn't. And again, it does suggest policies that are different than I think many will have encountered in New Albany and other parts of the jurisdiction. And perhaps a refresher might be helpful. We in the Northland area are sometimes trying to maintain a more suburban feel, certainly than other districts in Columbus. That's why we're not necessarily fans of some of the C2, P2 policies as they pertain to, again, moving buildings closer to the street, so forth and so on. But it just occurred to me if we hadn't had one, we probably should, or it might benefit the group, and maybe we would benefit from an update. So, thank you.
It's a great point. Thank you, Dave. Okay. Go ahead, Mark.
Oh, just to clarify, and Stephanie, you can tell me otherwise, we're using the design standards of the Rocky Fork Blacklick Accord plan when using the checklist. So not as much the full like C2, P2 guidelines, the plan design guidelines.
Honestly, if I remember correctly, and this is really hurting my brain at this point, if I remember correctly, Steve had said that we actually were already there with the standards, and they were actually matching a lot of our standards we already had, because Rocky Fork was already pretty progressive in a lot of its policies.
We'll have to check back with our management and
Yeah,
clarify, and if we want,
that's fine.
And if you'd like to talk more about it, then we're happy to have that dialogue too. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I think there were a lot of concerns, and Steve had outlined that most of it was stuff we were already doing. But that's literally all I can pull out of my brain at this point. So, yeah. Great. All right. Any other comments or business that we would like to discuss tonight? All right. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Moved.
And I heard two voices. Do I hear a move in a second? We'll say Jay seconded. How's that sound?
I'll second it. Jay seconded.
All right. That sounds good. All right. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate everyone's participation. Thank you to the applicant again. And everyone have a good night.
Take care.
Everyone, stay safe.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.